stairs were steep, the paper heavy in my palms, and a gobble ghost hunting for the perfect quiet calm. I was stacking up the ages, sorting through the truth, when the library shifted and I lost my brittle youth. Gravity, it has no mercy for a mind so deeply read. Just a stack of leather bindings and a silence in my head. Now I'm behind the bars, a curiosity for the stroll, a premium price for the pieces of a scurlery soul. They want the finish, the final word, the ink to dry, but I'm just an imp watching the world pass by, traded in my annotations and a name, a bargain that no one remembers, but everyone claims.
Imagine the most high stakes, just the most nerve-wracking shopping trip possible.
Oh, absolutely.
You aren't navigating a crowded, air-conditioned mall on a weekend, You are walking through the Bronze Citadel.
Right, which is just a sprawling, smog-choked military fortress.
Exactly. Located in the very first layer of the Nine Hells. And you aren't shopping for shoes or like a new phone. You're acting as the armed escort for an infernalist.
Yeah, and your mission is to help her buy the soul of an erotic fiction writer.
Which is wild. A writer who recently died falling down a staircase and was magically transformed into a winged imp.
It is, it's the ultimate buyer's market, really, where the currency is literal suffering.
And the customer service might actually extinguish your existence. Welcome to our deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm here with our resident lore expert.
Hey, everyone. Ready to jump into the hells.
Always. So today we are unpacking the incredibly rich, bizarre, and just morally complex events of our source material, Session 9, The Last Work of Cicerox, Part 2.
There's so much to get into with this one.
So much. We're exploring the intense story elements, the deeply weird character interactions, and the profound moral dilemmas that happen when mortals try to conduct everyday business in a literal hellscape.
Yeah, to fully appreciate the sheer absurdity of this errand, you really have to look at the immediate psychological shift required of the party.
Right, because just days ago, they were investigating Baelist cults in Baldur's Gate.
Exactly. Then they had to hitch a ride in a screaming infernal war machine, fight off a raiding party of abyssal demons, and finally arrive at Zariel's great military capital.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because after all of that apocalyptic combat, the instruction they get from their boss, Carilla, is astonishingly mundane.
Oh, totally. She just says she has private errands.
Right. She just tells them to go hang out at the local tavern for a few hours. Like, you're in hell. It's a suffocating dry heat. The sky is full of floating fortresses. And she's like, go grab a drink. How do you even begin to act normal there?
You really can't. The tension comes from transitioning from a mindset of absolute adrenaline-fueled survival to, well, urban navigation.
In an environment that is fundamentally hostile to life.
Yeah. Exactly.
I am fascinated by how that hostility is built right into the physical architecture. The Bronze Citadel isn't a city that grew organically over centuries of trade, right?
Not at all. It's a permanent war camp that just refused to leave.
The source describes it as permanent structures of black stone and smoldering metal, just arranged around massive forges holding pens and shadowed alleys.
Because the physics of Avernus dictate its structures. The Bronze Citadel is the primary staging ground for the Blood War.
So every piece of black stone, every forge, every alleyway, it's a mechanism of warfare.
Precisely. And the sourceless burning orange light of the plain means there are no natural cycles of day or night.
Which has to be psychologically exhausting, no relief at all.
It creates an environment of perpetual vigilance. There are no civilian infrastructures because there are no civilians.
Right, only soldiers, slaves, and the merchants who profit off both. And walking through that environment, the party is drawing intense scrutiny.
They definitely are.
I noticed the doubles were specifically whispering and staring at Ciantal. They're a tiefling, so you would assume they'd blend in here better than the rest of the mortal party. Why does Ciantal stick out so much?
You would assume that, yeah. But the devils aren't staring because Ciantal belongs. They're staring because of what Ciantal represents historically and really contractually.
Contractually? How so?
Well, we have to look at the metaphysical weight of the Calamus Pactum, right? The artifact the party had appraised in Dis, That quill was used by Asmodeus to sign the original pact with the Toral 13.
The 13 Warlock Covens. Right, so this isn't just an old antique. This is the specific instrument that altered the entire tiefling race's bloodline.
Exactly. We often think of contracts in a mundane legal sense. But an infernal pact drafted by the Lord of the Nine isn't just ink on paper.
It's a cosmic rewriting of reality.
Yes. That single stroke of the Calamus Pactum echoed backward and forward through generations, altering DNA and soul resonance alike. So when Santal walks through the Bronze Citadel, it is a deeply profound moment. The denizens of the Citadel don't just see another fiendish creature.
They sense the reverberations of that original magic.
Exactly. Santal is a living, breathing artifact of infernal history, connected to this place by ancient contract, yet noticeably standing apart because of their mortal soul.
The physical sensation of that must be overwhelming. I mean, imagine you're standing in that suffocating heat, knowing the very essence of your lineage was drafted in the shadows of these fortresses.
It's a heavy burden.
It's like being a tourist who accidentally wanders into a highly classified active military base. You're trying to act casual, looking at the architecture. Well, absolutely everything and everyone around you is designed for war.
And they all know you don't entirely belong there. It highlights how environments fundamentally shape behavior.
So true.
In a place built entirely for eternal conflict, finding a moment of peace is a structural impossibility. Aimless wandering in Avernus doesn't make you a tourist. It makes you a target.
Which perfectly explains why they're approached almost immediately. Their attempt to just kill time leaves them wide open for someone who's been tracking their movements.
Yes, someone who fights with leverage rather than hellfire. Nulzura.
Let's talk about Nulzura. She's fascinating.
She really is a fascinating study in planar infiltration. As an Arcanoloth, she's a Yugoloth, a mercenary fiend from the neutral evil planes.
Right, so in a strictly lawful evil hierarchy like the Bronze Citadel, she's a total outsider.
Completely. Yet she navigates it with practiced charm and absolute confidence.
She invites them for drinks at the Ashen Cup and casually orders a bottle of Mahadi's reserve wine. And Valessa immediately recognizes the name Mahadi as a famous Rakshasa merchant.
Which is a very deliberate choice on her part.
Right out of the gate, Nulzura is establishing her status. She's basically saying, I have wealth, I have taste, and I am a major planar player.
It is a highly calculated opening sequence. She establishes rapport, demonstrates her resources, and only then does she drop the massive revelation.
That she's after the exact same imp that Kirill is here to purchase.
Exactly.
This brings us to the backstory of Cicerox the imp. And I have to say, this is an absolute masterpiece of dark, tragic irony.
Oh, it's so bleak.
Cicerox wasn't spawned from some pit of hellfire. In her moral life, she was a quiet, unassuming scribe at Candlekeep.
Right, a place of monastic study focused entirely on the preservation of knowledge and history.
But Cicerox had this vibrant secret life. She secretly authored prolific, highly sought-after dark erotic fiction.
Smutty chapbooks, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And then her mortal life ends in the most anticlimactic way possible. She trips and falls down a staircase.
It's so tragically mundane, and here is where we have to examine the brutal mechanics of the afterlife in this universe.
Right. What usually happens when a mortal soul goes to hell?
Well, the standard operating procedure for a mortal soul entering the hells is a terrifying process of erasure. They wash up on the banks of the river Styx.
And the waters physically strip away their memories, right?
Everything. Their memories, their identity, their entire sense of self. They're processed into the maggot pits to become a mindless, squirming lemur.
Which is the absolute lowest, most pathetic form of devil.
Exactly.
But Cicerox bypasses all of that, because her fiction was apparently a massive hit among powerful collectors in the hells.
Yes, they physically rescued her soul from the river Styx before she could be erased.
They skipped the Lemur stage entirely and instantly promoted her to an imp, just to save her writing talent.
I want to pause on the mechanics of that rescue, actually, because it reveals something deeply disturbing about the Hell's value system.
How so?
To pull a soul from the Styx and preserve its intellect is an act of immense magical effort. It requires a deliberate intervention against the natural metaphysical gravity of the plane.
Right, they don't just do that for anyone.
Exactly. And why do they do it? Not out of mercy. They do it because raw, mindless suffering is common, but refined, creative suffering is a luxury.
Oh, wow. That is dark.
They preserved her intellect purely so she could keep writing dark romantic fiction for eternity.
It's the ultimate violation of agency, framed as a promotion. They saved her mind, just to enslave her talent.
Precisely. And now she is locked in the infernal menagerie, which presents a logistical problem for Nalzura.
Because Nalzura is banned from the menagerie.
Right, due to some past unpleasantness with the proprietor, a Cambion named Neriza.
So Nalzura needs the party to act as her proxy.
Yes, she offers them a comprehensive counterdeal. If they betray Carilla, intercept Cicerox after the purchase, and hand the imp over to her.
She'll provide soul coins, magical items, and most temptingly, passage home out of the hells.
It's the ultimate temptation for a party desperate to escape.
But Circe, the paladin, shuts it down instantly. She flatly refuses, citing her word and her principles. Now, hold on. I really have to push back on this.
Okay, let's hear it.
She is a paladin. Her baseline job description involves smiting evil and freeing captives. Why is she suddenly playing defense attorney for an infernal contract?
That's a very fair question.
I mean, is she actually making a moral stand here, or is she just terrified of breaking the rules?
Well, that is the exact friction the environment is designed to create. Let's look at the mechanics of a paladin's oath within a plane composed of pure, lawful evil intent.
Okay.
In the prime material plane, morality is often judged by outcomes, saving the innocent. But in the hells, reality is held together by contracts.
So breaking a contract is physically dangerous.
Yes. If a paladin breaks their sworn word in Avernus, even to a fiend, the metaphysical blowback could be catastrophic. They risk compromising the very spiritual foundation that grants them their power.
But the outcome for Cicerox is identical. Carilla works for Raphael, who is a Cambion rival of Nalzura.
True.
The party is bound by contract to help one evil entity buy a soul, and they're refusing to help a different evil entity buy that same soul. It's the lesser of two evils scenario where the evils are basically twins.
And Nalzura even points this out.
Right. She questions how much principle a paladin can have while acting as the bodyguard for an infernalist.
Nalzura brilliantly exposes the hypocrisy of applying mortal morality to planar survival. Circe clings to her contract because, in a realm of absolute chaos and suffering, a sworn word might be the only tangible piece of structure she has left.
If she breaks it, she loses her anchor.
Exactly. Nalzura sees this rigid adherence to rules and pivots her strategy. She leaves, but she leaves behind a leather satchel containing 600 infernal gold coins and a magical calling card.
600 gold. Just left on the table as a casual afterthought.
It is a psychological masterclass. Look at the layered manipulation here. First, she probes their ethical boundaries. Second, she casually drops highly classified lore. She mentions Raphael's true nature and specifically brings up Vale the Assessor,
proving she knows all about their highly secret appraisal of the Calamus Pactum in Dis.
Yes. She is weaponizing information, demonstrating that her surveillance network is flawless.
And the gold is just the final twist of the knife. It's a stress test for their greed. By leaving the gold, she makes them complicit in her scheme, regardless of their vocal refusal.
Because even if they don't take the job, they are sitting at a table with 600 gold pieces of an Arcanoloth's money.
It totally plants a seed of paranoia.
Precisely. She is playing an incredibly long, patient game. The party is left richer, but significantly more compromised.
And while they're processing this massive ethical headache, they still have to deal with the immediate reality of their surroundings.
Which is an ordeal in itself.
They're sitting in the Ashen Cup, waiting for Carilla, and the hospitality here is its own unique brand of horror. The proprietor is Dame Sarava Bogcrown.
Sarava is a striking figure. The sources note her regal bearing, but with a highly specific and unnerving physical trait.
Her clothes and her hair are perpetually, inexplicably soaking wet.
Yes.
Which makes zero sense given the thermodynamics of Avernus. The plane's heat is described as a suffocating, dry, searing forge that literally steals the breath from your lungs. Moisture shouldn't exist here.
But Circe recognizes the biological reality of what Sarava is. She isn't a standard devil native to Avernus.
Right, she's a succubus.
Specifically, a variety of succubus from Inaros.
Ah, the third layer.
Yes, Inaros is the third layer of the nine hells, characterized as an endless, putrid, highly acidic bog. Her wetness isn't sweat, it is a physical manifestation of her native planar alignment.
She literally carries the foul atmosphere of Inaros with her. It's such a brilliant, deeply gross biological detail.
Very gross, yes.
And naturally, being a succubus, she aggressively flirts with the party, particularly zeroing in on Valessa. It turns a standard tavern interaction into a minefield.
Because succumbing to a succubus usually ends in the rapid draining of your life force or soul.
Right. Every flirtatious comment is laden with a lethal threat. But they're trying to lay low, so they do what any adventuring party does. They order a meal.
And the sensory details of this meal are exquisite in their awfulness. It provides a fascinating look into the planar physics of corruption.
Okay, so Vengfree and Valessa order a sampler plate, putting on Corilla's tab. Let's start with the abyssal chicken skewers.
The abyssal chicken?
An abyssal chicken is this featherless, backwards-footed demonic creature that scurries through the gutters. And the skewers arrive, greasy, grimy, and perpetually underdone in the center.
Which presents a genuine biological hazard when you consider it as demonic poultry.
Oh, absolutely. Then there are the black salt curds. The text notes they taste exactly like food left in a refrigerator with something deeply rotted.
That pervasive, creeping flavor of absolute spoilage?
Yes. And the stick-swashed rind cheese, whose smell is described by the group as, quote, frankly criminal. Not just bad, but an active offense against the senses.
I want to analyze why the food is so bad, actually.
Is it just bad cooking?
No, it's not just a matter of poor culinary skill. Earlier, Mad Maggie explained the mechanics of planar food corruption to that.
Right, I remember that.
Food from the prime material plane always tastes foul, corrupted, or sulfurous in Avernus. The plane itself alters the molecular structure and flavor of anything wholesome.
So Avernus actively corrupts purity.
Yes, it is an alignment made manifest. So to eat anything that doesn't literally taste like ash, you have to consume the native flora and fauna.
But the native fauna is a diseased, backwards-footed rat bird, and the dairy is criminal.
Exactly.
It reminds me of a really high-end, avant-garde restaurant where the food is objectively terrible, but you have to pretend it's great because the maitre could literally consume your soul, or like a parasite.
A parasite is a great analogy.
Avernus ensures that you can't rely on your own resources from home. It starves you of comfort, forcing you to consume its own vile products just to survive.
It slowly forces you to internalize the corruption of the hells just to keep walking. That is exactly the mechanism at play.
Normalcy here is just a thin, greasy veneer over eternal suffering.
The mundanity of ordering a sampler platter is violently contrasted with the horrifying reality that to survive, you must literally swallow the corruption of the plane.
Ugh. Having survived the culinary assault of the Ashen Cup, the party realizes they need to see how commerce actually functions in a city dedicated entirely to war.
Right, so they split up.
And the two shops they visit provide this incredible jarring contrast in what the hells actually value.
Let's look at the first one. Cirrus, Santal, and Shane navigate to a dark curio shop called the Crooked Ledger.
Run by Searle, a barbed devil.
Searle represents the abrasive, hyper-transactional nature of infernal society. She has absolutely zero tolerance for window shopping.
Santal, leaning into their background as a scribe, asks about high-quality stationery. And Searle pulls out the Plume de Gnomes.
Which isn't just a nice pen.
No, it's a magical quill that permanently remembers every single signature it has ever written and can flawlessly reproduce those signatures on demand.
It's incredibly powerful.
The price tag is a staggering 10,000 gold. In a mortal realm, that's just a high-end forgery tool. But in the Bronze Citadel, that feels like possessing the launch codes to a nuclear arsenal.
That is an incredibly apt metaphor. Consider how infernal bureaucracy operates.
It's all contracts, right?
Exactly. The entire hierarchy of the Nine Hells is built on immutable ledgers, soul pacts, and ironclad signatures. Infernal law relies on these contracts being fundamentally unbreakable.
So that's a huge deal.
Think of a soul contract like a cosmic blockchain. It requires absolute cryptographic certainty. The Plume de Gnomes is essentially a universal private key generator.
Oh, wow.
It allows the wielder to bypass the cryptographic security of infernal law. That is why it costs a king's ransom. It isn't just a tool. It is a weapon of mass bureaucratic destruction.
The economics of that are wild. 10,000 gold for the power of forgery. But right next to it, Cirrus finds a small stack of cheap paperbacks.
And we know what those are.
Yeah, they are the smutty chapbooks written by Cicerox, the very imp they are currently trying to buy. The price, 1 or 2 silver pieces.
The thematic weight of that price difference is profound.
Exactly. The art, the actual physical product of a mortal soul's labor and creativity is considered cheap, disposable trash. It costs 2 silver.
But the tool designed to manipulate and enslave other souls costs 10,000 gold.
Yes. And the artist herself is about to be the subject of a high-stakes, multi-soul bidding war.
It perfectly distills the economic philosophy of the Nine Hells. The system does not value creation. It only values possession and leverage.
They do not care about the story being told. They only care that they absolutely own the storyteller.
Right. And while they are exploring the transactional nightmare of the crooked ledger, Valessa and Vagfrior have an entirely different, incredibly emotional encounter.
At the Red Anvil of Bel's shadow.
Yes. The Red Anvil is a prestigious forge historically associated with Bel, the former archdevil of the lair. The smith running it is Melis, a broad-shouldered tiefling.
But her significance goes far beyond her trade. She is a survivor of the fall of Elturel.
Which is a massive detail.
The fall of Elturel is one of the most cataclysmic events in recent planar history. An entire holy city from the prime material plane was physically dragged down into Avernus due to a dark, hidden pact.
Thousands of innocent mortals were instantly plunged into the blood war.
And Melis survived that descent. She didn't just survive, she carved out a functional existence in the Bronze Citadel by mastering infernal metallurgy.
She teaches Valessa the mechanics of working infernal iron and green steel. She explains the immense, almost impossible temperatures required to make infernal iron malleable.
How does one even forge something that is fundamentally hostile? I mean, the iron itself seems to resist being shaped by mortal hands.
It requires an extraordinary imposition of will. Infernal iron isn't just metal, it is saturated with the ambient malice of the plane.
So it fights back.
Yes. To forge it, the smith has to physically and spiritually dominate the material. Melis has to force her will into the metal, which makes her survival and her trade an act of incredible daily defiance.
That defiance makes the emotional core of this scene so devastating. Melis asks the party for a favor.
A very simple favor, really.
Right. If they make it back to Baldur's Gate, she wants them to find her brother. She just wants them to deliver a message. She wants them to know that she is alive.
And specifically, she tells them to make sure he knows she is not a lemur.
That specific qualification that she is not a lemur carries massive psychological weight.
Absolutely, because as we established, a lemur is the absolute nadir of existence. It is a mindless, agonizing mound of melted flesh, stripped of all memory and humanity.
So by specifying that she is not a lemur, Melis is sending a highly specific message to her brother.
She's saying, the hells tried to grind me down, they tried to erase my identity, but I held on to my mind. I am still me, my soul is intact.
It's a staggering moment of humanity. In a city where Searle is pushing a 10,000 gold forgery pen to enslave empires, Melis is just desperately trying to ensure she isn't forgotten by her family.
It's a beautiful contrast.
It proves that even in an environment perfectly engineered for spiritual annihilation, there's love, and there's a desperate desire to be remembered.
And the tragedy of Melis clinging so fiercely to her own soul makes the events of the following morning all the more chilling.
Because the next day, it is time to finalize the transaction for Cicerox.
Right. Carilla leads them through the smog-choked streets to Nereza's infernal menagerie.
It's described as this chaotic outdoor market, teeming with bizarre, hellish beasts and caged fiends, and Nereza herself is highly theatrical.
She's a Cambion, arriving in a bright flash and a puff of black smoke.
Nereza operates with the absolute confidence of someone who controls a highly liquid market. She greets Carilla with barely concealed amusement, but her attention immediately pivots to the party.
She zeroes in on Seantal.
Yes, looking at them with intense fascination and calls them a throwback.
She notes that Santal lacks the typical taint of Asmodeus, which again ties back to the Calamus Pactum we discussed earlier.
Exactly. Nereza's keen eye recognizes the historical lineage. Most modern tieflings bear the distinct, homogenized physical traits dictated by the overarching pact of Asmodeus.
So by calling Santal a throwback, Nereza recognizes that their specific bloodline predates or operates parallel to that homogenization.
She views Santal not as a person, but as a rare antique, a historical curiosity that happens to be walking around her menagerie.
It's an incredibly uncomfortable way to be perceived, especially when you are standing in a literal cage market.
But then the main event begins. Cicerox is brought out, and the visual is just heartbreaking.
It really is.
The text notes she is hiding behind her own wings, physically trembling. This isn't some proud, defiant devil. This is a former Candlekeep scribe who is completely, utterly out of her depth and terrified.
Nereza even theatrically confirms her history, mocking the idea that a talent for dark romantic fiction originated from a dusty Candlekeep scholar.
And then the economics of the transaction shift drastically. Carilla and Nereza had a prearranged, agreed-upon price, 5 soul coins.
Let's break down the macroeconomics of a soul coin for a second. This isn't just minted gold.
No, it's way worse.
A soul coin is a 5-inch iron disc that contains a fully conscious, trapped, suffering mortal soul. It is the high-grade currency and primary fuel source in Avernus.
So Carilla is attempting to buy one highly specialized soul using 5 generic suffering souls as cash.
That is the grim reality of infernal trade. But Nereza suddenly violates the agreement. She jacks the price up from 5 coins to 6, citing competing interests.
This has to be Nulzura's doing, right? The shadow influence.
Absolutely. Nulzura couldn't purchase Cicerox directly due to her ban, but her mere inquiries, her probing of the market, created artificial scarcity and drove up the value.
Even as an outsider, Nulzura exerts enough economic pressure to force inflation.
Exactly. Carilla is furious, but she is cornered. She needs the imp for Raphael. She is forced to pay the 6 coins.
And the physical aftermath of the sale is terrifying in its sudden bureaucratic efficiency.
It's chilling.
Nereza accepts the 6 suffering souls. She snaps her fingers, and with a heavy dramatic thud, she magically conjures an infernal iron cage perfectly fitted around Cicerox.
The transaction is instantly codified in iron. Nereza vanishes. The soul is packaged for transit.
The mundanity of the cruelty is striking. A profound violation of a sentient being's agency just occurred in broad daylight. And how does the party react to this horror? Vagfrier, the barbarian, casually buys a backwards-footed abyssal chicken for 5 silver pieces as a pet. Carilla pulls out a sending stone to call Mad Maggie for their extraction ride. It is treated as nothing more than a completed errand.
Yes.
Okay, here is where I absolutely have to push back. I'm looking at this entire sequence, and I'm horrified by the party's inaction.
I get that.
These adventurers are supposed to be heroes. They spent days fighting a Balist murder cult to protect innocent people in Baldur's Gate. They have a paladin who literally swears an oath to fight tyranny.
Right.
Yet they just stood there, completely silent, and watched a sentient, talented, terrified writer be bought and locked in an iron cage in exchange for 6 other tortured souls. How do they justify this level of complicity? How does a hero sleep at night after watching that happen and doing absolutely nothing?
Your outrage is completely valid, and it's exactly what the environment is designed to provoke. This is a masterclass in forcing mortals into an impossible no-win ethical corner.
But they could have fought.
Let's logically break down the brutal reality of planar politics that they are currently trapped within. What happens if they attempt to act like traditional heroes? What happens if Circe draws her sword and attempts to shatter that cage?
They strike a blow against infernal slavery. Isn't dying for a righteous cause the entire point of playing a paladin?
It is, if that death achieves something. But let's look at the immediate cascade of consequences. First, they are bound by a mutual protection agreement with Carilla.
Sure.
Breaking that deal violates their honor and instantly makes them oathbreakers in a realm governed by law. Second, they are standing in the middle of the Bronze Citadel's primary market.
So they'd be surrounded.
Exactly. If they draw steel, they immediately make an enemy of Nereza, a powerful, well-connected Cambion. Third, they steal Raphael's prize, making an enemy of a highly influential planar entity.
I see where this is going.
Finally, they trigger a response from the Citadel's military forces. They wouldn't just be killed, their souls would be violently harvested and minted into the very coins they are trying to protest.
So they are trapped by the sheer scale of the evil around them.
Exactly. And even if, by some miraculous intervention, they survived the combat, they would be permanently stranded in Avernus.
Because of Mad Maggie.
Yes, Mad Maggie is their only viable transport out, and Carilla controls the communication with her. If they turn on Carilla, they forfeit their extraction. They are stuck in the first layer of hell forever.
Wow.
Intervening isn't heroic. It is tactical suicide that guarantees their own eternal damnation while achieving nothing for Cicerox, who would simply be recaptured.
The hells force them into a state of silent complicity.
Yes, doing the right thing is structurally impossible without sacrificing their own existence.
It is physically sickening. The system is designed so that you cannot remain clean. Just by surviving, you become an accomplice.
And that sickening realization leads directly into the emotional climax of the entire session.
Yes. The party retreats back to the Ashen Cup Inn, carrying this caged imp, to wait for Mad Maggie to pick them up. And here is where Cicerox finally acts.
The quiet, suffocating desperation of this scene is profoundly moving. They are sitting in this grimy tavern, the adrenaline of the market fading.
And this small, frightened creature reaches her hand through the heavy bars of her infernal iron cage. She gently tugs on a party member's cloak.
She begs them for help, not with a grand speech, but with a quiet, terrified plea.
She tells them she is absolutely terrified of being delivered to Raphael. She knows what Cambion collectors do to their prizes. She just wants to go home.
She tells them she wants to go back to Candlekeep.
She even tries to bargain with the geography, saying she would settle for Boulder's Gate because it's close enough that she could physically walk to Candlekeep from there.
Let's analyze the deep tragedy of that specific statement. She's been transformed into an immortal fiend. She's sitting inside an iron cage in the Nine Hells, having just been purchased with the souls of 6 other mortals.
And she's thinking about walking distances?
Exactly. She is rationalizing the walking distance between 2 cities on the prime material plane, as if she could just catch a carriage and resume her old life as a scribe. She is desperately clinging to a mortal perspective that no longer applies to her biology or her reality.
It forces the party to actually sit down and discuss the mechanics of what it would take to actually save her. And the mechanics of salvation here are incredibly daunting.
Because, as you pointed out, she isn't a mortal soul anymore.
Right. She hasn't just been kidnapped. She has been physically and spiritually transmuted into a fiend. She's a devil.
The metaphysical barrier to saving her is massive. To restore her to her mortal life would require magic of the absolute highest order.
I like that.
They discuss the necessity of a spell like Greater Resurrection, but casting that on a fiendish entity is highly complex. Alternatively, they would need to locate her original preserved mortal body back on the prime material plane.
Which is an expensive, highly uncertain prospect that requires resources they do not possess. I mean, she died falling down a staircase. Her body could be buried, cremated, or lost entirely.
Exactly.
They don't have the magic, and they don't have the time. But they can't just look at this terrified author and say, sorry, the planar physics make saving you too complicated.
So what do?
One of the party members leans in and makes a quiet, highly constrained promise. They promise her that simply getting her out of Avernus and back to Baldur's Gate is the best hope they currently have.
They don't promise to break her contract.
No, they don't promise to restore her humanity just to get her to the city. And Cicerox settles back into the center of her cage, still terrified, but holding on to that tiny glimmer of hope.
The irony of her specific punishment is profound, and it is the crux of her suffering. As we discussed earlier, her mind was deliberately preserved from the river Styx so she could be an eternal slave to her writing craft.
Right.
But by preserving her intellect, they also preserved her memories, her specific desires, her longing for home, and her capacity for existential terror.
If she had just been processed normally and turned into a mindless lemur, she wouldn't be suffering like this. A lemur doesn't cry for Candlekeep. She wouldn't know what she had lost.
Her brilliance, her actual talent as an artist, is the direct instrument of her torture.
It connects to the overarching bleak theme of agency within the Hells. In a realm where souls are literally burned in furnaces as fuel for war machines, or stripped of all memory by the Styx to be remade as cannon fodder, retaining your identity is presented as the ultimate privilege.
But for Cicerox, retaining her identity is a curse. She has total agency of thought, but absolute zero agency of action. She is a highly intelligent commodity that is fully agonizingly aware that it is a commodity.
Imagine standing in their shoes in that tavern. You have this caged soul tugging at your cloak, begging you for salvation. She is articulate, she is terrified, and she just wants to go back to her books.
It's a horrible position to be in.
But your only ticket out of this suffocating heat, the portal back to your own world, relies entirely on handing her over to the person who just bought her. What is your move?
It's the ultimate test.
Do you shatter the cage, violate the contract, and die a meaningless death in Avernus? Or do you carry the cage back home, knowing you helped build the prison?
It is the ultimate test of adventuring ethics, and there is no clean, heroic answer. They are forced to return to Baldur's Gate not as triumphant paladins who smote the evil of the Hells, but as active accomplices to infernal trafficking.
Doing it simply so they can survive to fight another day.
Exactly.
And that profound moral compromise brings us to the end of this deep dive. Let's summarize the key mechanics and takeaways from this journey into Session 9.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We explored the Bronze Citadel, a suffocating, war-torn hellscape where the very architecture and physics are designed for eternal conflict.
We watched the party navigate complex planar politics, fending off infiltration and bribes from the Arcanoloth Nelzura.
Who used 600 gold as a casual, brilliant psychological stress test.
We analyzed the mechanics of planar corruption through the culinary horrors of the Ashen Cup, understanding why a plane of pure, lawful evil forces prime material food to rot.
We witnessed the stark economic contrast of infernal commerce, from the 10,000 gold plumed gnomes representing cryptographic bureaucratic control to the devastating emotional plea for Malus.
An Eltral survivor who refuses to let the hells erase her humanity.
And ultimately, we analyze the brutal reality of planar complicity, watching our heroes become trapped by the threat of their own damnation, forced to aid in the trafficking of a tragic, brilliant author, locked in an iron cage, begging to go home.
It is incredibly heavy.
It is. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought regarding the mechanics of survival here.
Something that builds on the reality of the environment we've dissected today.
Exactly. Think about the river Styx. We detailed its mechanics earlier. It flows right through this realm. Its waters are a constant looming threat, a mechanism specifically designed to strip away all memory, to erase your sense of self, and to turn you into a blank, suffering slate for the hells to mold and utilize.
Yes.
Yet look closely at Cicerox. Look at Meles. Their entire existence in this realm is built on the act of remembering.
Meles remembering her brother, ensuring he knows her soul is intact. Cicerox remembering her craft, her quiet home in Candlekeep, and her desperate desire to return to it.
In a universe whose entire metaphysical gravity is actively trying to grind you down into a mindless maggot pit lemure, perhaps the ultimate act of defiance isn't fighting with a sword.
That's a great point.
Perhaps it isn't blasting demons with magic or breaking an unbreakable iron cage. Perhaps the ultimate act of defiance in the Nine Hells is simply, stubbornly refusing to forget exactly who you are.
A powerful philosophical truth to carry with you.
Thank you for joining us on these deep dive. As always, this analysis was custom tailored just for you to help you unpack the underlying mechanics, the rich lore, and the lingering complex horrors of the hells. We will catch you on the next one. Keep your sword sharp, trust no contracts, and whatever you do, do not eat the Styx-washed rind cheese.
The stairs were steep, the paper heavy in my palms, and a gobble ghost hunting for the perfect quiet calm. I was stacking up the ages, sorting through the truth, when the library shifted and I lost my brittle youth. Gravity, it has no mercy for a mind so deeply read. Just a stack of leather bindings and a silence in my head. Now I'm behind the bars, a curiosity for the stroll, a premium price for the pieces of a scullery soul. They want the finish, the final word, the ink to dry, but I'm just an imp watching the world pass by, traded in my annotations and a name, a bargain that no one remembers, but everyone claims. In Baldur's Gate, they hide the truth beneath the counter shelf, while in the hush of Candlekeep, I'm the shadow of myself. They buy the stories of the tailors, the linens and the rains, the scandal of a miller's wife, to soothe their winter pains. They call it trash, they call it rot, they call it moral loss, yet they memorize every page, indifferent to the cost. One wants the finished ledger, the other wants the spark. One wants the secret agreement signed in the dark. I correct their grammar, up the lies, but the cage is getting smaller as the hunger in them rise. A mind designed for logic, now a product for the trade. Just another chapter of a debt that can't be paid. Yeah, I'm behind the bars, a curiosity for the stroll, a premium price for the pieces of a scullery soul. They want the finish, the final word, the ink to dry, but I'm just an imp watching the world pass by, traded in my annotations and a name, a bargain that no one remembers, but everyone claims. So read the fine print if you think you've got the wit, even if the velvet chair's where the devil tries to sit. I'm writing on the floor, things I'll never be. Correction. The story ends with no one truly free.